right, like Kimberly said, my name is Susan Simkins, and I want to talk to you today about getting started into web development, specifically with how you can start to find your first job in front-end web development. So I want to start off by talking about who I am, just so you know where my experience is, where I come from, because depending on who you talk to, everyone works in a different environment on different teams. They look for different things, different experience. So what you hear from people is going to be a little bit different depending on their specialties. I do mainly front-end development, and I've also done quite a bit of UX work, specifically consulting for redesigning websites. I've been in the field for about 7 years, since 2012, and currently I'm a web designer 3 is my official title at Oracle. It's basically a senior web designer, entry levels 1, then kind of like mid-levels 2, and seniors 3. It's a very corporate-y title, but mainly I do front-end development. I help kind of consult on redesigns. I help set coding standards for the team, help recommend what we need to look for in new hires and things like that. And previously, I've been a senior UX developer at Big Wing. It was a marketing digital agency that's part of the Oklahoman. So it was typical agency type work. It was very fast-paced, a lot of small to medium-sized websites. I did a lot of UX consulting for them, information architecture, user research, things like that. And because we had a very small web team, I also did the front-end development and worked with, we did mainly WordPress themes, so working with WordPress developers they did the back end, I did the front end, so making sure the themes were set up right, the templates were set up right, things like that. Before that, I was a front-end developer at iThemes. If you're not familiar with them, they do WordPress plugin development. So I helped with that, and then also did WordPress training, so teaching people how to get started in using WordPress as a content management system, mainly from a user perspective and less of a developer's perspective. So business owners who wanted to get in and learn how to use WordPress to manage their site. And my first kind of full-time job that wasn't freelance was as a web design instructor for a company called Pluralsight. They acquired a company I worked in called Digital Tutors, and they did 3D design and animation training. Their kind of tagline was, "We teach people how to make movies and games," and I was brought on as their first hire to kind of help them get into web design tutorials. It was all front end, teaching people how to transition from being more of a designer to getting into coding, so learning HTML, CSS, where they need to get started, and things of that nature. And then before that, I did freelance web design and development for a couple years, mainly just small sites, whatever I could find, creating a custom design and turning that into WordPress themes. So one of the biggest questions I get from people is, what do I need to get a job? And there are really 3 different things you need to get a first job in any career, and that would especially web development or coding. You need the technical skills. You need the soft skills to be able to work on a team, unless you're going to be working by yourself. I can't really think of a job where you don't at least need to work with a client or something like that. Even if you're in freelance and you're not working on a team, then you're still going to need those soft skills. And then also, every job you're going to find, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I guess, they want experience. A lot of them kind of have unrealistic expectations for experience, because how can you get experience before you get a first job? So we'll talk about that as well. So obviously, with the technical skills, one of the biggest questions people have is, what should I learn? And this is a really hard one, because there are so many different types of development jobs out there. There are so many libraries, there's so many frameworks, lots of different languages. So anything, you can do front end, you can do back end, you could be a full stack developer, you could do DevOps. You could focus on UX development like I did for a while, which is a lot of, in terms of coding, a lot of prototyping and using those to create user tests, UI development, even whether you work on applications or websites, the type of development and the skills you need are going to be much different. So I'd encourage you to find what you like, try out different things, and try to focus on just one or two areas because it's so easy to get overwhelmed when you're getting started. There's so much out there to learn that it can feel like it's impossible to really get the skills you need to start a job. So from my perspective, which is front-end web development, I really recommend that you start with kind of the basics, learn the basics of HTML and CSS. You might hear the buzzword HTML5. They call it a version of HTML5 or HTML, even though it's not a version. It's just referring to, the newer tags, although they're not really that new anymore. I think of like the semantic elements. I want someone who knows how to use HTML elements correctly. Like a lot of times you'll see code that's very div intensive, but there's a lot of benefits from using more semantic elements like the header, the footer, the section tag, aside, figure. I mean, any that you can think of, and they have automatic accessibility benefits when you build websites that way. So looking for kind of knowledge into that, maybe a framework like Bootstrap or Foundation just to show that you can dive in and learn one of those. I don't have a preference for either, and in fact, I'm not a fan of frameworks like this in general, but so many teams will encourage people to use them because it speeds up development a lot, but unfortunately, they're extremely bloated. But it is good to have knowledge of how to use them because many jobs want people to be familiar with frameworks. Then for CSS, a lot of the kind of basic theory, like do you understand the cascade? Can you explain inheritance? Do you understand how specificity works? Can you explain different types of selectors and which ones might overwrite others? Can you explain how or why not you might use certain selectors in your code, be able to talk about maintainability. Organization is huge. A lot of people really struggle with how to organize CSS because it's pretty open-ended. There's so many different ways to do it. Also, being familiar with a preprocessor like Sass, I think is great. Being able to talk about how you set up your Sass files, how you organize them, your folder structure. JavaScript, a lot of my teams, we haven't been super heavy on JavaScript. They've been a lot of, more or less basic websites. So if you know the basic theory of JavaScript, can you explain concepts like hoisting, for example? Are you familiar with a framework? It could be as simple as using jQuery and being able to show some work with that. Content management systems. WordPress is obviously my preferred content management system because I used to focus on WordPress theme development, and it runs over 27% of the web. I love that it's open source, and it has the best documentation, hands down, of any content management system out there, I would bet. I haven't seen one that's better. So having those skills, especially if you're going to work in like an agency environment like I did, or at my current job, I work with a lot of marketers, so all of them have to work with a content management system on a daily basis. So you have to understand it not only from a development perspective, but oftentimes it falls to you to kind of be a troubleshooter and to explain to them how to use the interface, so being able to walk people through that. Version control. I've worked with a lot of different types of version control. I prefer command line, but I think the most important part is that you know how to use something. I've worked with teams where they only use like a GUI, and that's fine as long as you understand the concepts behind it. You know how to back up your code, preferably. If you know how to work with multiple people accessing a repository at the same time, that's great, because especially when you run into conflicts, it can be really tricky to figure that out. And then also to kind of have a basic idea of how you work in a team environment. A lot of jobs I've started at have been a new position, and so they didn't have a workflow in place. So if you don't have a process that would help you be efficient and have a good end product before, at least a rough idea of how you might accomplish that, then that's really helpful, because unfortunately a lot of the times you find out that those processes are just not always in place, and it's up to you to create them. And one other great thing to do is to look at other people's team processes and get an idea of their environment and some really good things that they recommend that you can learn. This is an example one of my former coworkers talked about all the time. 10up is a WordPress development company, and their engineering best practices, they thoroughly document their philosophy, what types of things they look for. They link to examples, and so going through here and finding things that you're unfamiliar with, and they talk about why it's good to know them. That can be a really good way of kind of identifying any areas that you need to brush up on or that you're more interested in, and things like that. So soft skills, that one's really hard to learn. You can really only learn through experiences and practicing, but it's really important to be able to communicate to that to someone in an interview. So as you're working on projects, especially if you're working with other people and their code, if you can write down examples or try to remember times when you ran into a problem and how you communicated to overcome those problems. Anything that shows that you like to collaborate with people and a desire to keep learning and growing. So you guys are already doing great. You're coming to meetups like this and meeting people and networking. And so, yeah, being able to talk about how you're active in the community, those are really good ways to show a lot of these soft skills. So how do you learn the skills that you need? Education, obviously, is one of the easiest ways. Most people I've ever worked with have been self-taught as developers, so it's totally fine if you're teaching yourself or don't really have a degree in it, as long as you can demonstrate that you have the experience and the skills that you need for a job. So there's formal training. I don't have any experience firsthand with university programs, but from what I have heard, it can be hard for them to stay up to date since technology changes so rapidly. Tech and vocational school, I went to Francis Tuttle's web design and development program for 2 years full-time. I started as web development, I did that for a year, and then I did web design for a year after that. And I can't recommend that more highly if you have the time to put into it. I mean, there are online programs and there are in-person programs, and full-time, it's like a 40-hour-a-week job, and I know not everyone can do that, but I think that the amount of experience and stuff you learn in a program like that is fantastic. And it's very inexpensive compared to attending something like a university. And then you meet other people who are in the program, so it's a great way to network. I got my first 3 clients when I was doing freelance work through the instructor there, because people would come and contact the school. They can't afford to pay an agency, but they're looking for a student, and they still want to pay you, and it's not going to be like a whole lot, but you get the experience and then still making money, more money than you would at like a part-time job or something like that. So that's good. Online education, there's a lot of free places that you can go learn. YouTube has all kinds of tutorials of varying quality. Code Academy, learn by doing. I think that's a great way to get in and really learn code. Obviously, the more you do, the better you get at it. Khan Academy is good. Then there are paid subscriptions, video tutorials. I'm a little bit biased here because I worked for Pluralsight, and I'm still doing training here and there for them on the side, so I think that's good. But I also don't really learn well through video training, even though I create it, which is kind of ironic. But there's so many different types of education that can suit your learning style. For all kinds of cost levels, it's such a great field that pretty much anyone can find a way, as long as they have the drive and the desire to learn the skills. And then obviously through the community, attending meetups, watching talks, going to conferences, anything you can do to kind of see what other people are talking about. It's a great way to identify what types of things that you need to or want to learn more about. So how do you get the experience, which is one of the hardest things because everyone wants to see, it seems like 3 to 5 years of experience when they put out a job posting. And in junior developers, what we look for is, rather than 3 to 5 years of experience, I mean, that's completely unrealistic to ask someone before they even have their first position. So I think if you can get any kind of real-world experience, that's what we look for, having a couple examples of live websites. Like when I got my first job, I think I had 3 live websites up. And I got those through the school, like I talked about, through the community, meeting people. If you don't find anything that way, you could always ask friends and family. I mean, it seems like everyone has an idea for a website or an app. So just volunteering, even if you have to get that experience, ask them to pay for like the hosting and the domain, and then you have those real examples to show for a portfolio. So showing those work examples you could do through a portfolio, one great way is to have a personal website, and then you could talk about how you designed and built your own website as well. So they have another example of work. LinkedIn has spots where you can upload examples of your work there, and then you could link to live examples if you don't have time to build a personal website. And then also live code samples are a great way to show your actual code. So hosting code in a repository like GitHub or whatever. If you are more into like interaction design or front-end design, then CodePen is a great way to show your work. And then it's really important, in addition to just having code samples, to be able to talk about the process and how you got to the end product. When we conduct interviews, that's something that really stands out, is that not that they can just show the work, but they can really talk about how they got to the end product, what they did to plan, to research, to come up with the idea, if that was a part of it. What kind of development planning did you do? What kind of tools did you use? Why did you use those tools? Those types of things, just being able to talk about those can show a lot about your work and you as a person. So actually finding a job, most people I know have found jobs through personal connections, which can be kind of intimidating when you're getting started in a new field. Maybe you don't have a lot of personal connections, but coming to stuff like this, going to user groups, meeting people is a really, really great way just to find connections. Even through previous jobs you may have had, you never know, even if you started in a different field or different career. Maybe there's a job opening on a web team somewhere and you know somewhere in a different department, they can often introduce you to someone who can help you kind of get a foot in the door. And then there's always recruiters, and there's a lot of mixed opinions on recruiters, but there are good ones that exist. I've worked with some really great ones. Just kind of watch out for some red flags, like if they don't listen to you, if they're often sending you jobs that have nothing to do with what your focus is. Like I get a lot of jobs for Oracle database development, which is not at all what I do as front-end developer. I think they just see Oracle in my profile and then just see me, send it to me anyway based on the keywords. Or .NET jobs, I don't know .NET at all. So pay attention to the ones that do try to send you jobs that match what you're looking for, and then also be firm with what you want. One time I worked with a recruiter and he told me just straight off, he was like, "We're not gonna get the salary you're asking for." And I was like, "Well, can we just submit it and I'll interview, and if it's not a fit, it's not a fit," and tried to argue me out of it. And I was like, just do it anyway. If you don't wanna work with me, that's fine. I'll keep on looking somewhere else. And we went in there, and then I got the job offer I wanted to. So they aren't always exact experts on what the requirements and possibilities of a position are, because it wasn't like it was an unreasonable request. It was like perfectly within the market value for that position. They just ask questions and make sure that you're getting what you deserve out of it, and they're not trying to take too much of a cut out of what you deserve for your skills. And another good thing about recruiters is it's really great for interview practice. So if interviews make you really nervous, even if something might not be an ideal job for you, obviously you don't want to waste someone's time, but if there are ones that you might be interested in getting in there and just getting the experience, talking to people in interviews, see how different companies conduct interviews can be really great. So if you do find a perfect job that comes along, if you have that experience and you can be comfortable and confident in an interview, then that'll go a long way. And job postings all over the place. Obviously, there's big places like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed that make it really easy to fill out a application and put your resume up on the internet. I actually found my first job in a newspaper posting in the Oklahoman, so you can find a job anywhere, even in places that you might not expect. Job descriptions, when you're looking for postings, often they're written by someone in HR or someone who doesn't have any experience with the team or the day-to-day responsibilities of a job. So you might find all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what the actual position is. So if you can get on the phone and talk to someone or someone on the team, oftentimes something that may not initially seem like you have the skills for would be a good fit for you could often be a really good job that was just kind of botched by someone trying to do their best to write a description of a job that they don't understand. In interviews, as I mentioned, it's really good to get real practice, just get out there and see what it's like. Also, when I was first interviewing, I would research typical interview questions for a position and then ask my friends and family to walk me through a mock interview, which sounds silly, but it made me feel a lot better about whether someone was going to try to trip me up with something that I had thought through a lot of common questions before and kind of had a starting place that I could talk about and adjust to any additional questions they had or the environment or the type of company. And be prepared to talk about your work, go through your past examples, think about the type of project, anyone you worked with, the type of tools, be able to talk about your process and explain that. When you're in an actual interview, make sure you ask the interviewers lots of questions. Especially try to find out things like what's the actual job like. It can be very hard to identify that based on the job posting or even based on like initial interactions with people. A lot of times I'll get in a job and it's completely different from the impression I was given from the initial interview. So ask about a typical project, what the deadlines are. If you can walk around the office and get a feel for the team or the office environment, especially if you're there later in the day. You can get a feel for maybe whether there's a good work-life balance or maybe if people are overworked based on how they interact with you, how they look. I did one interview that I turned down because I got there at 2 p.m. and I was interviewing until 7 p.m., including an impromptu dinner. So I had a good idea that maybe they weren't going to be super respectful of work-life balance, which is really important to me. So being able to figure that out ahead of time is great. And also company culture, are there people, do they seem happy? Are they talking, or is everyone at their desk kind of silent? Do they look miserable? All types of things can give you some cues as to what the environment is like. Interviews also have a couple of typical stages. Usually, or at least where I've been a part of interviews, there's either a phone interview or an in-person interview that's basically a screening to kind of see, does this person have the basic skills they say they have? Is this someone we could see being a good fit for the position? And then follow that with a more detailed technical interview, so asking specific technical questions about projects, about technologies, theory, things like that. And then if there is a final interview, or maybe this is combined with prior interviews, questions about, are they a culture fit? Would they be able to work with the team well? Are they able to collaborate? Is their communication good? Kind of getting those, seeing if they have those skills, because at the end of the day, if someone has the technical skills, if you're not going to be able to work with them for various reasons, then they might not be a good fit for the job. And then after interviewing, kind of deciding whether a job is a good fit for you is really important. Sometimes you can be eager to accept a job just because it's exciting to have a job offer, but obviously jobs can be bad. So make sure you research the company and the team. Try to get into a good idea of the company's values, the team values, what type of team they are. Also, even though a team might be great, they might not be a good fit for how you work as an individual. I've worked in an open office environment, and my team was fantastic, but I just found it really hard to focus because there were 150 people walking around the office every day, and I'm like a squirrel person, so I just accidentally, like, even though I didn't want to, just like watch people as they're walking across the floor because I just get distracted. So for me, having a little bit more of a quiet office is a lot better for my productivity. Watch out and see if they have high turnover. Obviously, there's probably a reason that people are leaving. If they're leaving, ask them questions about work-life balance, if that's important to you. Some companies don't really respect that, especially watch out if they want to give you a company phone, or everyone has a laptop these days, but that could be kind of a sign that they want you to be able to work at any time. Brand new positions can be kind of hard often if it's your first, or especially if it's your first job in a field, because when there's a brand new position, a lot of the times they don't have a concrete idea of what your job responsibilities are going to be, and so that can be extra stressful in a first job, trying to figure out what this job should be, and also trying to get your feet off the ground and get used to a new career field. So unnecessary stress there sometimes, but it could also be a great opportunity if you are willing to deal with that stress. You get to really have a lot of role in shaping a position and the workflow and kind of the processes for a company, which can be really cool. And then outdated technology, if they're several years behind, that can be really frustrating if they're not keeping up to date, because then you as a person, you have to learn older technology, and then that can kind of hurt your marketability or your ability to find and grow into new positions, because you're not able to kind of learn and stay up to date on the job as much as you would be if someone was using newer technologies. And then work environment, I kind of touched on already. Open offices, at least for me, some people love them because they can get up and talk and collaborate. If they're in a team where they have to have a lot of interaction and discussions, that can be really good. But I get really distracted, as mentioned. Working from home, in my current job, I work from home probably 3 to 4 days a week and go in for like 3 or 4 half days, and then the rest go home. For some people, you can get kind of cagey, get cabin fever if you're home all the time, but I like not having a commute, and if I want to wear my pajamas, I try not to, but I can if I just feel like being comfortable for the day. And then, getting a feel for the office culture. Like, I've had some jobs where I'm still friends with people I worked with 6 years ago. We have our own Slack group, and we're great friends, and it's awesome. We do game nights, and we have a D&D group and a book club, and that's so much fun. And then I've worked with other office cultures where I only know a couple people, and people come and go a lot, so you don't really get to know anyone that well, which is fine, just kind of deciding what you need to get out of an office culture and making sure that your needs are met in that way. And that's all I have. So does anyone have any questions? I think I saw yours first, maybe.
We have someone in Twitch chat. It's the name Jess Wade 7. He asks,
That is a great question. I think that comes down to code samples. So the question was, when you're using a online learning platform like Code Academy, how can you demonstrate the proficiency and the skills that you learn from a coding platform like that? And I know some of them, I'm not sure, I can't remember, I haven't used Code Academy in several years, but some of them do provide completion certificates, so that's something that you could list on your resume. If you're working on a project, if I remember correctly, Code Academy has a lot of little mini projects that you could do to build up your skills. You can put that on GitHub, and you obviously want to label your source as where you got it from. You could say, I completed these Code Academy exercises, and talk about the skills you used, and then they can come in and view your code from their project. So I think that's a good way to do it.
What does a typical 8-hour workday look like for you?
For me,
What was the question?
oh yeah, sorry. What does a typical 8-hour workday look like for me? I am not a morning person, and my boss knows that. We talked about it before I accepted the job. And so I start around 9:30 every day. And I usually start by checking my email. I work mostly with events marketing team, and they have a lot of urgent last-minute requests when they're updating events and things. And so I make sure there's nothing urgent that's coming in that I need to take care of immediately. And if there is, I'll have coffee and go straight in there and start pushing updates. If not, then I'll go into the office and work until 1 or 2 p.m. because I get stir crazy if I'm home all the time. But I am really productive in my home office because I spent some time trying to make it comfy and in the type of environment that makes me productive. So I have like a stand-up desk and then a normal desk. So if I need to stand up, I can stand up. If I want to sit down, I can sit down. So I finish out the afternoon there. So my days typically from 9:30 to 5:30 every Tuesday. We have a team coding call, and most of the team is in the Philippines. So they're on a 13-hour time difference. So we have our call from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. And yeah, can't really think of anything else. In terms of projects, okay, yeah, for sure, that's important. Mostly we work with a product called Light CMS. It was Element NetFusion, I think, was the company that developed it, which was acquired by NetSuite, which was acquired by Oracle. And so there are a lot of legacy websites built on Light CMS. So being familiar with WordPress and other content management systems, I had to learn how to use Light CMS and build websites in that, which is kind of a challenge because there wasn't a lot of technical documentation for developers. It was more for users. So it was kind of dig in and try to figure it out. So I help with a lot of conference websites. So they're not huge websites. They're probably like 5 to 10 pages. Just doing the front end for that. I help kind of set coding standards for the team in Manila. So recently I've been doing some recommendations for changes to projects, how they could set up projects, use, for example, Gulp to automate tasks instead of doing things manually, how to organize and optimize their CSS based on common engineering best practices. And we're migrating a website over onto Oracle's content management system while it's in the middle of a redesign, which is a lot to do at once. So I'm on a lot of calls with their marketing team, kind of figuring out the content strategy and any revisions that have made to the design, and building templates for the new system. Yeah, sure.
This is a simple one. So I noticed what you recommended up there, but what books do you recommend for someone who's learning front-end development or just by design?
Okay. the question was, what books do I recommend for learning web design, web development? Okay. This is going to be a shameless plug. It's not out yet, but I'm writing a textbook that's teaching people how to get into HTML and CSS and front-end development. So hopefully that'll be good when it comes out. Be by Bloomsbury Interactive Publishing, they're a publisher in the UK. I really like O'Reilly books. They can be kind of dry, but they explain the technical side of things really well. I like a lot of their JavaScript book. JavaScript, The Good Parts is one I remember really liking it. JavaScript Patterns is really good. They're just general JavaScript book that's like this big. It's huge, but if you have a specific question about something, like it's such an exhaustive resource to get an overview and kind of get a good explanation of specific things. I'm trying to think. I can't remember what it's called, but there's this company that makes a lot of front-end development books, and they're kind of silly. They have a lot of cartoons in them, so they try to make it humorous, but it makes it a little bit more interesting to read a textbook. I'll have to sit and think about what they're called, but maybe if you Google like funny web design book, it might pop up. Yeah, and then for design, my favorite design books have been focused mainly on UX research, and I just completely blanked on the company name, but they run a really big UX consultancy group. And A Book Apart has a lot of different good titles. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they run an Event Apart and what's the website? Jeffrey Zeldman helped started that website, and a lot of well-known people will write just kind of a one-off book on their specialties. They have a really good one on web typography, which is, it's deceptively simple, but there's really a lot there with web typography and setting type for the web. That was one of my favorite books for sure. I can't remember his first name, but it's by something Brown. Yeah, and then online, it's kind of written in a textbook type format, but Hack Design is a really great free course. I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to sign up through email, and then they would send you a lesson a week in your inbox. And they have a lot of different authors, and it's more of like Hack Design, how to learn design from more of a technical background. But yeah, they have a ton of different design topics, and then also coding for designers. So if you're more of a visual learner, anything that's aimed at teaching like a designer how to code is good, because they try to make it more visual. Yes.
So you mentioned that, of course, web development goes through new languages every year. So where do you see web development going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh man.
The main ones, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Where do you see it going?
That's a great question. Okay, so the question was, since web technologies are changing every year so rapidly, where do I see HTML, CSS, JavaScript going in 3 to 5 years? Is that right? Or just in the future? This is a hard question, because I think it's kind of a maturity point to where we aren't going to see anything super crazy changing. I think hopefully CSS, for example, will start getting better and better, like adding native support for variables and for more functional programming type logic, because that makes it really easier to write and maintain CSS in a way that's maintainable and kind of follows best coding practices. Hopefully HTML will continue to go in more of a direction for like they did with HTML5 or the tags they added in the last version, like more native support for semantic elements. I think that's important for accessibility, is having a lot of those built in, a lot of ability to create more of a rich, expressive web. It works better with SEO. The more a algorithm or something like Google can understand the context of your content based on the markup you're using, the better and smarter it can be at using it in different contexts. Yeah.
How long did you study for launching your first project? Because I want to know how quality do we need to present to the employee for qualify the job.
Okay, so the question was, how much coding experience did I have before I got my first job or my first project? First project. Okay. So my first project, real-world project, was a nonprofit in Edmond called Shepherds of Love. They reached out to Francis Tuttle and wanted a student to help them with their website. I had been in the program, I think maybe 8 months at that point, and I knew a little bit about WordPress. I had built a couple project websites in class. So I'd say I had like a decent understanding of HTML and CSS, didn't really know any JavaScript, knew like a teeny tiny bit of PHP maybe, and I thought I knew a lot more than I actually knew. So I took on this project, agreed to develop a WordPress site, and I had to learn so much for my first project. I was woefully unprepared. But I think that's a really great way to learn, is to take on something real and then you find out exactly what you need to know to build that project. So as long as you give yourself time to learn, I mean, I think it's hard to find, unless you're doing the same thing over and over again, every project you have, you're gonna have to learn a new type of technology or a new skill or what's changed since the last time you used a technology. So I would say as long as you have some of the basics down, it's never too early to take on a first project and to just to tackle it, because that's the best way to learn.
You mentioned earlier about how you found your career, and it said that it was like this X amount for a salary when you're looking. How do you price your skill set? Because I've been actually kind of wondering that. Continuing to study, right in the middle of JavaScript, confused as heck. But, I mean, besides the point, I've kind of thought about that on the side. Like, you know, and I've asked myself, I could go to make $2 an hour, but I know that's like, that shouldn't be a thing.
Sure.
I mean, how do you price your skill set?
Yeah, that's another great question. So the question was, how do you know what's the right salary to ask for? How do you price yourself when you're looking for a job? And I think one of the first things to do is do some research. I think salary.com or something like that, it's run by HR people, and they post salary ranges for different positions. So look at, first of all, the type of job titles that you might be looking at, and then also what type of skills that you'd be using in that position, because oftentimes job titles can vary so much between different companies. Sometimes it might be called something, but it's a better match to another job. And then they'll have a low end for that job in your area and a high end and kind of a median. And I would shoot for somewhere in the median if it's your first job. You don't want to undervalue yourself, especially when you accept a new position, because any future raises or bonuses, a lot of the times are based on your base salary. So if you're already getting underpaid from the start, then you're hurting your growth potential for the future, because your incline will be much slower if your base starting salary is lower. So obviously you don't want to ask too much and have them take you off the table. So asking, Yeah, salary is such a sensitive sensitive thing for people to talk about. It can be hard to ask people what they're making, but if you know someone who's comfortable talking about what they make in the field, then you can kind of get a baseline for what's realistic in the area. And then also looking at the type of company. So if you're trying to get a job at a startup, generally they don't have as much revenue or ability to pay you, so it might be on the lower end of that scale. If it's at a bigger company, generally times they'll want to be competitive, so it would be towards the median or maybe even the high end of the scale. So yeah, and never agree to a salary before you have an interview. A lot of people try to pin you down and try to get you to give a range before you even get in the door, and that can kind of shoot yourself in the foot, especially if the responsibilities are going to be much higher than you initially thought when you started interviewing. Then they already have you pegged at a range that may not be good compensation for the type of work you would be doing. So yeah, research. Glassdoor is another really good place to research and see what people at the actual company get paid. At least if you can't find it for your specific position, then looking at market pay for other positions in the company and what they're paying compared to that, you can kind of get an idea of what they're willing to pay for. And then always counteroffer would be my other piece of advice. A lot of people are scared, especially in a first job, to make a counteroffer and just accept their first salary, but you know, people, they expect you to bargain. So the worst thing that can happen is that they tell you no. And that's the easiest way to get a higher salary just from the start, is make a counter offer, maybe provide some justification for why you think you deserve that higher number. You could say, this is more in line with the market pay for my position, and based on the skills that I have, I think this is a fair compensation for what you're looking for, and then just see what they come back. Mm-hmm.
We have another question on Twitch. Jessway7 asks, do you recommend any JavaScript frameworks or libraries like Node, Angular, or React?
The question was, can I recommend any JavaScript libraries like Node, Angular, or React? I would say anymore, I'm not the best person to ask that, because most of what I do isn't on the JavaScript side. If I have to do anything in recent projects, it's mostly jQuery. So I think it highly depends on what you want to do. If you want to get into web apps, then certainly learning something like Angular or React would be great. If you're looking more at websites, jQuery is super common, so know your use case for it and then decide where to focus after that. There's no reason to learn all of the frameworks, just kind of decide what you need to get the job you want.
No questions?
Yeah.
So what about web design or development interested you? What about the actual job responsibilities and developments you have?
That's a great question. So the question was, what do I like about, or what got me interested in web design and development, and what is it about the day-to-day job that make me happy? So I actually got started in web development because I graduated from Oklahoma State University in 2011 with a degree in political science with an idea that I was going to go to law school. And I started studying for the LSAT and then thinking about whether I actually wanted to be a lawyer. And I just liked history classes and studying law, but I don't think I actually wanted to be a lawyer. So after I graduated, it's like, well, crap, what do I do now? And my brother is a web developer, and so he kept on telling me that my type of people are in web development, and I'm still not quite sure what that means, but he encouraged me to like give it a shot. He's like, you like computers and you like design, so maybe this could be like a really good interaction of the two. And my sister-in-law had also graduated with a degree in journalism, and she was kind of looking for something to try until she figured out long-term what she wanted to do. So she found Francis Tuttle's program and enrolled in it. And I was like, well, why not? Why don't I enroll in Francis Tuttle too? And at the very least, I'll have my sister-in-law there as a friend. And so I joined the program with her, and she actually ended up getting a job at an agency after 6 months and left the program. And I stayed in a little bit longer and ended up finishing the program because I was scared to get a job. But yeah, I found that, I was always interested in computer science, but I thought it wouldn't be interesting enough for some reason. But I think I just didn't have a real understanding of what you could do with it and what it actually was. And so the more I got into web development and especially design, in all of my jobs, I've done a good amount of development combined with the design. So I like that it has kind of that nerdy technical aspect of, I love researching things, so I'm always getting to research technologies and to learn. I really enjoy coding, so I get to code every day. And there's not many jobs that I can think of that I can design something and use a creative side, and then combine that with something that's highly technical as well. So it kind of plays into two things I really, really enjoy. I love the flexibility of being in web development. I've met a lot of really great people, so I think meeting fun people and then just really enjoying the day-to-day work keep me happy in my job.
Would you take a language class if you were only offered C++, C#, or Java, or would you just nix the language class at college and just do it yourself?
Okay, so the question was, would I take a language-based class like C++ or Java, or would I just nix it and learn it myself? I think that depends a lot on the class itself, because a lot of them are kind of out to date at universities. Most people I've heard who've taken a coding class in college, they only have like one lab a week. And so I think having so little hands-on learning combined with so much theory learning, like if you want to learn the theory behind it, then that could probably be a really great fit. But if you want to get more of the hands-on learning how to code, then I would maybe go a different route. Because, yeah, it's really hard to learn something if you're, unless you want to put in a lot of time outside of class, then maybe that would be a good balance of learning the theory and being able to learn the actual coding side as well. But from my personal opinion, I think for formal education, something like a vocational school for languages is one of the best ways to learn, because it was the theory side, but it was also, we coded for like 6 hours a day. So I think that's the best way to learn, is to learn by doing.
Are there any podcasts you listen to that kind of help you keep abreast of your field or need?
Sure, that's a great question. So recently I've been on non-coding or web development podcasts, because that's kind of my way to relax and shut it off. But when I do listen to web podcasts, I like The Next Web. Jen Meyer, I think, is who creates that. And then I can't remember what it's called, but it has Chris Coyer and a developer from Austin. They had a podcast show that is really, really funny. And so if you want to listen to something, I recommend that one very highly, because it's entertaining. But yeah, in terms of podcasts, I mostly use those for more like entertainment type and less learning. I do like newsletters for keeping up to date, because anything that creates less work for me and being more efficient is great. So someone else does all the hard work and tries to find things that people are talking about and send it directly to your email, so you can kind of scan through and see what are people talking about, kind of the trends between the different newsletters and decide what do I need to spend my time learning to keep up to date, see what's happening. So I think that's a great way for sure.
All right, one last question. This one comes again from Jeff Way on Twitch. Are coding boot camps worthwhile, and are those skills competitive?
Okay, so the question was, are coding camps, coding boot camps considered worthwhile, and what was the second part of the question? And are they competitive? Are the skills competitive? I can't speak a lot about boot camps, but from what I've seen, it does seem like a lot of them give a good variety of skills that are in demand for the workplace. I mean, at the end of the day, they're businesses, so if they can't get their participants jobs, then they're not going to stay in business. So from what I've seen, it does seem like they stay pretty up to date. And from what I've heard from other people, a lot of what they get out of boot camps is they want to have a certain success rate of people placed in jobs, so it can be a great opportunity to maybe have a job opportunity that you might not other have through the connections that you can make. But like with anything, there's going to be varying quality levels in what you get. So, but what I would say though, that I think most of what they teach you could teach yourself through online resources for probably much, much cheaper, but it depends on your learning style, and some people aren't, they struggle with self-direction and kind of deciding what to focus on. So if you want someone to kind of do all that for you in an easy to follow formula, then sure, I think a boot camp would be good to start learning.
Okay, last question.
Wait.
How do you learn the freelance job? Its criteria is, I think, high, very high for getting the freelance job. I mean, only know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is not enough for my perspective.
Oh, for getting okay, so the question is, how do you get a freelance job when it seems like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript aren't enough in your perspective to get a freelance job? I would say, yeah, it depends on obviously where the source is coming from. So if you're contracting with a company who already has a development team, they would probably be a lot stricter on what they want, because they want someone who can work in kind of their team environment and up to their team standards from an external basis. A client, this might sound horrible, but someone who's less tech savvy is not going to really know whether or not you're up to date with JavaScript, for example, or how good your coding skills are. So it's not to say that you should screw them over and do a bad job, but there's more of an opportunity to take on something and learn while you're doing it. So as long as you follow through on your promises and you're ending up with a good quality product, then there's nothing wrong with learning while on the job, as long as you're not misrepresenting anything to the client or trying to be dishonest. So maybe try freelance jobs in a different environment. So rather than at a company or an agency, look for individuals or smaller businesses or something like that.
Okay, they better stop it there.
Okay.
So if you take your computer,